Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
And that's what's so critical. What you're thinking is still going inside of your body. Just because you don't say the words doesn't mean that it's not so, because you still think, right? And so we've gotten to the point where, well, as long as I keep my mouth shut, I'm okay. No, you're not. You're still storing up your body. You are still putting emotions in your body because of your need to be right. And if we have no right or wrong, then what is? And that's all there is, right? It's either energy or it's not. Whether you're speaking the words, whether you're thinking the words, whether you're thinking it, still matters.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.
Thank you so much for joining my guest and I today. We just really appreciate you being here and being a part of our viewership and just getting education and fun and laughter and feel goods, I hope. So I would love to introduce my guest, Dena Marriam. And Dena, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Patti.
You're just, I can't wait to hear about your life. I'm not going to read all your bio. People can find that online when they go to find out more information about you, because I'm sure they're going to want to. So, but talk to me about you. How did life start? Where did you go? What happened?
Well, I think I'm not much different from a lot of people. And then I think I've lived 3 lifetimes in my life so far. Who knows what lies ahead? But I've had 3 discrete careers, so to speak. But underneath it all was my spiritual practice. When I was 20, going off to college, I came across my guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, and was very serious about developing a meditation practice. This is before meditation became mainstream. So it was a little bit unusual at that time, and I had to keep it sort of hidden from my family and whatnot. But that was the major focus of my life while I was getting married, having children, etc., doing all the things that people do. I was focusing on my spiritual development, and I got married young, had 2 sons, got divorced young, and had to go to work. And so I started working as a writer in my father's PR company, and that was my first career. I did that while I was raising my children, to support them, really, focusing on my spiritual life. And at a certain point, as soon as my kids went off to college, I had an opportunity that came to me through work to organize a spiritual summit at the United Nations to sort of bring together the religious community and the UN community.
How do you get that opportunity?
You know, I was working for my father, who had a big PR company, and he was good friends with Kofi Annan, who was Secretary General at that time.
Got it.
The idea was proposed to Kofi Annan: if you want peace in the world, bring the religions together to the UN to sign a commitment to peace.
Beautiful.
So in the year 2000, we did that. And not surprisingly, there were very few women there because women were not in higher positions. I was oblivious to this. I mean, I was like a closet yogi, had moved away from organized religion, and the UN kept saying, make sure you have women. And I kept asking religious leaders, we need women. And they would say, why? So, oh, we don't have women.
Right.
So the summit happened and it was rather contentious. And after that, the UN said, we've got enough political problems. We don't need to get involved in religious politics. But the women were unhappy. So we went back to the Secretary General and said, the women would like their own summit of women spiritual teachers. Kofi said, very good idea. Go to Geneva and do it in Geneva at the Palais de Nation.
Right.
We encountered, I can't tell you how many difficulties. Every door that had opened us for the first summit shut for the second. The UN wanted to close the door because it was the religious communities were protesting. We don't have women religious leaders. So, but we held it, and it was a far more successful summit because there was no competition, no vying for who speaks first, who speaks longer. And I thought that it was called the Global Peace Initiative of Women Religious and Spiritual Leaders. And I thought that was the end of it. I've done my job. 2 summits, that's it. But then a group of women came from Palestine and Israel and said, could you help us organize a dialogue? It was in the middle of the Intifada in 2002.
Right.
So we did that. One thing led to another. We were working with Iraqis and then Sudan and then Afghanistan. So we ended up forming the nonprofit, the Global Peace Initiative of Women. And it wasn't just for women, but women were the leaders, the shapers of the vision. We held the dialogue, although there were many men there as well. And then gradually we shifted into more environmental issues and started going to the climate conference, talking about the UN climate conferences, about the spiritual dimensions of the climate crisis. And we began to grow and soon had a global network organizing dialogues on various themes around the world. And that was my second profession.
Wow.
My writing sort of at the company became secondary, and I was traveling the world because my father, who was the head of the company, said, go do that, follow your heart, go do this. And so I did that for 20 years.
Wow.
Then my third career came about when all of this time I was having past life memories return to me.
Wow.
And at first it was my life just previous to this, and then the one just previous to that, and then the one just previous to that, going back 6, 7 lives. And at first it was very disorienting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was like I have to function in the here and now, and yet I'm back in time. And so it was quite a struggle to learn to be in several time zones at once.
Right.
And I began to write about it. So I wrote my first book, My Journey Through Time, a spiritual memoir of life, death, and rebirth. And I showed it to a friend of mine who was a writer, who had just gotten diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she had just started TM meditation, and she was grasping. She didn't know what she believed. She read my book, and it just opened a whole new world of possibilities for her. Wow. And she said to me, Dena, you have to publish this. So I showed it to a few of my spiritual friends, and they said, you can't sign your name to this because, you're an interfaith leader. So I said, how can I write about my life and not sign my name?
Right.
Because in it, I write about how these memories came to me, how I was in the middle of, usually it was either meeting somebody who triggered something or going to a place that triggered something. And often I would check myself out because I had been married. I mean, got divorced when I was young, but I'd been married to a psychiatrist. So I said to myself, Dena, you have to make sure you're not going off into the deep end. And so I went to the places that I saw, and I confirmed many things. And I didn't do any research in this field because I came to trust what I was seeing.
Yes.
But after my first book was out, came out about maybe 6, 7 years ago, a friend of mine from the interfaith world, who is a Christian theologian, he emailed me and said, Dena, I've just read your book. I have to talk to you. And I said, oh no, okay, here's what my friends were talking about. Now it's like everything's out of the closet. I didn't respond to him. And he finally called me and said, I have to talk to you. I read your book. It was a life changer for me. And then he said, I started doing all this research. There's so much written about this subject and so much research. It's hard to deny it. Now, I hadn't done any research because I wasn't looking to convince myself. I was just trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Which for me was I learned, to me, it was a great teaching. I learned so many things. First of all, it overcame my fear of death because I saw myself as an eternal being.
Yeah.
I came to see how the law of cause and effect works and how everything that comes in our life, people, work, points of view, behavior, it all comes from somewhere. It's not arbitrary. It comes from our past.
Right.
And then if our past shaped our present, then our present is shaping our future, that we ourselves are the drivers of our ship.
Yes.
Nobody to blame. You can't blame any being out there who's punishing us and whatever. We are creating our own situation. So it's a matter of taking responsibility and making the changes that we want to see. So, and then the other thing that I learned was the power of love, that in every life, there was somebody who helped me get through a difficult period. There was always a guide there, always somebody to push me along, to help me make it through the challenge, the trial that I was facing. And I saw that we all have helpers. We all have guides, whether we see them or not. And I thought that I was given the opportunity to see this so that I could be an example to everybody. I'm no different from anybody else,
Right.
except that the veil was lifted for me.
Yes.
Everybody has these amazing experiences. We've been it all. We've been rich, poor, happy, sad, good marriage, bad marriage. We've had every possible experience.
Yes.
So what is there to crave? What is there to seek?
What is there to seek? Yeah.
The truth.
The
To know finally what is our purpose here? What is the goal of our life? Are we here just to scrounge around and make a little bit of money and have more children? Or is there a higher purpose to our life?
Right.
How do we fulfill that higher purpose?
Yeah.
And I think gradually the shift comes about where you're not seeking to fulfill this desire or that, but to serve.
Yes.
To serve the greater community.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you incorporate all that you've learned? I kind of want to go back to being aware of the past lives, and one following another and so forth. And what did that mean to you in being able to be aware of a past life experience and how it molded you or didn't mold you into what you're doing now? Was it a greater understanding of what you're doing in this lifetime, or was it things to let go of?
Both.
Work towards both.
I think that I came to see that my work, my interfaith work, my work with women, because I recognized that in the past, I've had many lifetimes where I couldn't express myself as a woman. I couldn't even have control of my own life.
Yeah.
So I understood why I had organized this women's initiative. I understood that in the past, I had been in situations where I had to bring together different communities. I was sort of a bridge. And so the interfaith work, the peace work, dialogue work was a culmination of numerous lifetimes. I saw that, and we all can reflect on our lives. Any troubled relationship is a leftover from an earlier time. Fix it now or fix it in the future. That's the choice. And I had a troubled relationship with my mother since I was young. She never quite understood me or got me. She couldn't understand why I couldn't be a successful businesswoman like my two other sisters. And what was this meditation and being vegetarian and what was this nonsense about? And I struggled with her until I finally understood that I had to just love her and not judge her.
Yep.
It took me many, many years and many attempts. I went to India so many times to dip into the Ganga to say, hey, please take whatever anger I have away.
Right.
At the end of her life, she just passed a few weeks ago. I was the one to look after her. And I came to really see her in a new light and to appreciate her just for her simple beauty. And we made peace with one another. But I made a conscious effort over many years to do that.
Yes.
And I know people who have turned away from troubled relationships and blamed it on the other person. Well,
Right.
she's just crazy.
Right.
You know,
right.
I can't
fix
relate
it.
to that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't serve anybody when we do that, because we'll just have to face it in the future.
Yeah.
So the way I came to understand karma is not a system of punishment and reward, but a system of energy, almost like a physics, like gravity is a physical law. Thought is energy, action is energy. You emit something, you set something in motion, and it has its return. So whatever energies you're putting out, there's going to be some reverberation from those energies.
Right.
And that reverberation, our goal is to neutralize. So if we set out a negative thought towards someone, we don't want it to reverberate in a negative way. We want to neutralize it.
Right.
So that's where the spiritual work comes in. How can you neutralize an anger or a fear? I think all the negative things that cause suffering, it takes patience, persistence, willpower, and conscious effort.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. I absolutely agree with that. I think that, I always talk about the difference between judgment and discernment. And judgment, we're going to have an emotion or an expectation to the statement. And discernment is being able to look at the other person and say, what a beautiful soul you are. We're not walking the same path. But I absolutely respect and adore what you're doing, and be okay with not, quote, fixing something, but acknowledging that they have a path that's just as important as your path is, and not judge them for that. I think that, in my early years, I oversaw women's literacy programs in 30 countries throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It's kind of my first big job coming out of school, out of high school, because I never went to college. Was taking that position and just watching culturally how the major differences and how people interacted with each other, and being in very fractious war zones where women were helping women, even if they were from another camp. They understood that literacy was what was going to free them and get them out of the situation that they were in. And boy, it really made a pivotal point in my life in looking at how do we as women support each other and honor each other, even if we're not in alignment.
With one of the hardest things, I look at our country today and say we have many different points of view about things, but we have to work not to judge each other.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's one of the hardest things, and one of the lessons that we all need to practice now, because it's hard. It's very easy to blame the other on a failure.
Yeah.
And it takes a certain maturity to be able to see that everybody participates in when things go wrong. And we can have different points of view, but we have to treat each other respectfully.
Yes.
And not judge each other.
Yeah, I think so critical. So when you look at your career and your life to this point, what really stands out for you as monumental in your experience?
So now my third career is writing books. I've just finished, I don't know, my fifth or sixth. That are based on memories, but it's really what I've gained, what I've learned from these experiences. And I think it's only useful to look back if you can gain something.
Yes.
To me, it's not a matter of curiosity, who I was or any of that. No, that's not useful. But if you can learn from your experiences. So I think if what I hope to do now is help people overcome their fear of death and realize that they are eternal beings, and that they have multiple opportunities to work on what they need to work on, and that the universe is gracious and loving and supportive, that the universe is not a judgmental, punishing universe, but a supportive one that gives us multiple opportunities to achieve what we need to achieve, what we want to achieve. But we need to have discernment, as you said, in what we pursue, because otherwise it could lead to more suffering.
Yeah.
So to help people, I mean, I think we're at an evolutionary moment for the human species, that we have to evolve beyond our self-focus to be able to look at the wider collective, the whole Earth community, because we can't survive if Earth doesn't survive.
Right.
We can't survive if the ecosystems don't survive. And we have to begin to work collaboratively, not competitively. We need a collaborative economy. We need collaborative social systems. So we're at an evolutionary moment now. So I think any of us who have any insight to provide in terms of how to move toward that is where we need to be putting our energy.
Yeah. How is the aspect or the moving forward in getting people to collaborate? Because that seems to be a challenge in our world that's so divisive at this stage in our beings. How do we help people understand the collaborative nature of what we need to be in supporting each other?
You know, I think that there are many, many wonderful instances. We only hear about the bad news. We hear about all the terrible things that are going on. But even during tragedies like mass shootings, when you hear about people who have teachers who have tried to shield their students, some who've lost their life protecting the students, these are heroic acts. You know, in the war in Ukraine, many heroic acts that we hear snippets of them, but we have to remember that there's more good in this world than evil. Otherwise, we wouldn't be around.
Right.
There is more good than ill.
Right.
And it's important to keep remembering that, and then to showcase. And I think the other thing people forget is how important daily acts are in your own little sphere.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many people, particularly young people, who feel helpless, that they can't contribute, they can't help in any significant way.
Right.
Every little act of kindness makes a difference.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the major takeaways, how we go about our daily life.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I just, one of the things that I always look at is, you know, if I'm working with a child and parents who the child is getting ready to transition and move on to another life, and you know, speaking with the parents afterwards, they get an energy. And I remember one day specifically dealing with that, and then stopping by the post office on my way home. And there was an older woman there standing, and she just looked so sad. She just looked lonely and sad. And I went over to her and I'm like, your blouse is so beautiful and it matches your eyes. They're just sparkling. And she just came alive. You know, she was just so happy to have an interaction, even though it only lasted, you know, 3 or 4 minutes, this shift in her. And then I had a date that night. And, you know, beautiful romance, everything. And the next day I thought, and I went, did anyone get a different energy from me? And I realized no, that everyone got the same energy. One was not more deserving of my love and compassion and empathy than another. And that the energy was, you know, doing what is, I don't want to say right, because that's not but when you're truly in your space of giving, everyone needs and can use some love and attention and some acknowledgement, I guess, of their soul. And I tend to live my life that way. And I'm surprised on how many people don't. And then when I least expect it out of someone's character, then all of a sudden they're nurturing. And I love it. I love watching the paradigms that take place amongst people, given what we give to them in terms of ourselves.
That's very beautiful, actually. And I think there's so much truth in what you said. It just a brief exchange can make a difference in lifting somebody's spirit. And I think that we have gone through so much difficulty as a nation, as a world, that now we need to come into the joy of being alive. And to me, there's no better way than to be among flowers, to see a bird, to look at a sunny day, to see beautiful trees. I mean, to stop and notice these things, which when we get too engrossed in our own stuff, we block it all out. And so the more we can come into joy in our daily life, the more we can help the world. I think the best way to help the world is to try to emit more joy.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So in writing more books, I mean, you're obviously putting thoughts to paper. What does 10 years look like for you? I mean, is it focusing on the world? Is it helping women? Is it helping men and women? How do you feel in this moment? Because obviously moments are going to change, but how do you feel in this
It's interesting you ask that, because one of the things, I mean, clearly writing has become my preoccupation, but I do have an activist side, and I can't ever put aside the need to contribute in whatever way I can. For many, many years, the focus of the Global Peace Initiative was awakening the higher feminine energy, what I call the sacred feminine, and ensuring that it has a voice and a place in the world. But in the last year or so, I began to think about, well, what about the higher masculine energy? That is also suffering, because we do a lot of work with young people, and young men are at a loss.
Yes.
Young men are struggling. And there's been so much in this effort to bring out the feminine, maybe a subduing of the masculine energy. But what needs to come out is the higher aspect. And so we started to talk about that. And it's interesting because people of my generation resonate immediately when I raise this issue. And when I raise it with young people, they sort of look at me blankly. It's like, well, what do you mean? You know? And I think to myself, are you not even aware of what that higher masculine, the feminine needs the masculine.
Yes.
We can't have it disappear.
Right. I always caution balance when we were going through the years of raising women's awareness and so forth, because I was just so, I don't know, it was in my vibe to just don't leave men behind, because it's the balance of the male and the female.
Key. The key is the balance. If one gets unbalanced, if the feminine comes up and the masculine is in a bad state, that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help the world. So it's a healthy expression of both the feminine and the masculine. And there are a lot of unhealthy expressions of the feminine too. We see it in our world today. And so how do you bring both the masculine and feminine into a healthy relationship with one another? I think that's the need of the hour.
Yeah. Give me an example of unhealthy female aspect in the world right now.
I think it certainly was true of my generation, women who use their sexuality I know I saw it in business, women who use their sexuality to get ahead. Yeah. We saw it in Hollywood too. Young actresses, they want that role. Well, they know how to get that role.
Right. Right. Very true.
And when a lot of this Me Too movement, which I'm supportive of, came up, I said to myself, there are a lot of legitimate cases, but they're all situations where women are not taking responsibility for their actions.
Yes.
You're going to the producer's hotel room. Don't be naive about it.
Right.
It's exactly. A coffee shop. Don't go to his hotel room.
That's right. It really comes back to that personal responsibility. Yeah. How are you going to get there? And I think I totally agree that using the sexuality piece didn't necessarily support women getting stronger in their world. I think that women, speaking for myself, just need the opportunity and the personal responsibility to get there without having to sacrifice who we are as women.
And we were putting that, we pay too much attention to our bodies, to looking sexy, to looking a certain way, instead of developing who we are and being given a position because of who we are. We have to contribute. I think that's changed, but there's still, many women who don't have that confidence in themselves.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. And it's always beautiful to see a woman develop her confidence and realize that there's no limits. And just realizing that doing what you want to do, doing what you feel you're called to do, is a path that's worthy of journeying, and taking that walk. It's awesome.
I think that there's an important role now for older women
Mhm.
who don't use the beauty card, but
Yeah.
but can say that I've lived a life and I've learned a lot and I've seen a lot, because we've seen a lot of changes within a few generations, within a few decades, a lot of changes. And yet, I also see there's a lot of insecurity in men. So there are so many issues that are sort of lurking under the surface.
Right. Absolutely.
And so how do we have a constructive discussion about some of these issues?
Yeah, I think it's so important. And I think women, I'm moving into my 65th year in a few months. And I feel like I'm at that stage of, possibly mentoring younger women of how do you come from a childhood that may not have been the best, and certainly financially not the best, and move through your life and learn and help and give and balance out yourself and balance out the world without giving yourself away. I think that that's a really critical piece. And I think that that's what I love so much about reading about the work that you've done in your lifetime in accomplishing that, and giving women that forum to really take personal responsibility and own their feminine without having to discount the masculine.
It's an ongoing, I think it's an ongoing effort. And I think that, there's still a long way to go in terms of enabling women's voices. I found, interestingly, that whenever we did dialogue exclusively with women, the issue of children, especially in conflict areas, comes up within the first hour.
Oh, wow.
When we do a dialogue with women are not a majority, the women issue of children can never come up.
Wow.
So that was like a very glaring point that we noticed in many, many dialogues, because initially we started bringing women together and then we opened it up. And then we moved toward working more with young people, because young people in their 30s, because I feel they need a lot of help and preparation for the issues they're going to be dealing with at leadership training, both young men and women. And so there's a lot more to be done. So there's no retreat into just book writing.
Thank you so much for being a part of Healing Within and Adventure Inside. You bring so much to the world, and I appreciate you very much. I just
thank you, Patti. Thank you for having me and for this wonderful discussion.
My pleasure. You take care.